We had an awesome Saturday of playing Runebound 2nd Edition. And I say Runebound 2nd Edition, which I think dropped around 2008, 2009, looking at the difference in the miniatures, the components, the miniature components from then, Fantasy Flight, to now, what's being put out. And looking at the evolution of this idea of miniature board gaming, although the line is a little bit blurry, so many amazing miniatures. Now that we've injected this technology, new design, you look at pieces like Nemesis. I love Nemesis Core. Playing that game, the miniatures, they're easily on par with some of Games Workshop's, a sci-fi miniature-based game. So much so in my Tyranid army. Tyranids are basically space bugs. In my 40k space bug army, I have incorporated the miniatures from Nemesis. And all the time when I play 40k, other players and enthusiasts are like, where'd you get those miniatures, right? So much possibility. The level of detail and components of miniatures across multiple spectrums, the golden age, truly the golden age of board gaming, which now within that framework leads into the question. I know some players, and I bet you know some players, and you might be one of them. We're doing this board gaming, war gaming, role-playing game type thing. And there's a lot of crossover. Some of my miniatures I will use in Dungeons & Dragons. Some of the miniatures I've used in other systems, pulling those in. An example would be Descent 3rd Edition. Some of the boss monsters are just tokens. I get that. The core game, they're tokens because they're trying to save money. I've replaced those with miniatures from other Terranoth, Fantasy Flight, Runebound, Rune something type games, getting that crossover. So within that framework, what about purchasing miniatures to utilize out of the current game system for another game system? Here's an example of that. God Tier. I've been playing God Tier. I've been pushing those Tactica vlogs up to the channel here. The miniatures behind God Tier. God Tier is this skirmish-based game where the tiers from the gods have fallen and warbands are fighting over them. Lots of different warbands, lots of different factions, lots of different unique factions, amazingly detailed miniatures. These are hard plastic miniatures, and the level of detail and the creativity and the sculpts, I think, rivals so many other miniatures that are out there. They're doing this kind of fantasy-based thing in a very, very unique way. Now, it's fantastic for the lore of God Tier and the immersion and the narrative, but there are a few sets that I know a friend of mine was interested in just to pick up and bring and use in their Dungeons and Dragons games. So this idea, as I connect with other players, more and more RPG enthusiasts or miniature enthusiasts looking not so much for the realm or the game mechanics or the system, they're looking at the miniatures themselves and purchasing them or pulling them in to expand their fantasy-based Dungeons & Dragons RPG-type miniatures. What do you think about that? And as an RPG enthusiast, that possibility of opening up your miniature collection, not just to kind of the standard D&D miniatures and miniatures made for fantasy-based games, but pulling in miniatures from war games, from skirmish-based games, from very detailed board games, not necessarily to play those systems or board games, but literally to use the miniatures, source the miniatures for your own use.